Hello, step inside and welcome. Welcome to the very first episode in English language of the podcast, The Voice Within. So if you are here, thank you for pressing play, for giving this space a chance. It really means a lot to me. Before we start, I want to take a moment to acknowledge people who have been listening to this podcast since its beginning, back when it was in Bosnian language, and those of you who just tuning in for the first time. So those who have been here from the start, thank you for staying. Thank you for trusting this process with me. And those of you who are joining me now, welcome. And I'm so grateful and I'm so glad you are here. So before we start talking about what is this podcast, who is this woman, what is she talking about, I want to introduce myself. So my name is Arva. And I was born and raised in Bosnia. For the past 13 years, more or less, I've been living in the Middle East. 10 years I was living in Qatar, and for the past 3 years I'm living in Bahrain, where my husband is from. And I'm also a mom. I'm also the mom of one little boy who has challenged me and reshaped the way I see myself and my world in ways I never expected. If I had to describe my life in one word, that would be most probably movement. I've lived in different countries, I worked in different environments, I met people from all around the globe, and one of the biggest experiences that shaped the way I see the world and the way I see myself is when I was working like a cabin crew. That experience opened my eyes, expanded my perspectives, and made me truly understand how deeply human we all are and how connected we are no matter where we're coming from. But before all of that, before traveling, before motherhood, before podcasts and any of this, I was just a kid growing up in Bosnia during the war. When the war in Bosnia started, I was just 6 years old. That experiences kind of planted the seed in me that I didn't fully understand until much later when I became mom. A seed of survival, a seed of questioning, a seed of deep reflection, a seed of independency. That experience shaped the way I navigate the life. And as I grew older, I realized so many of the things we struggle with us like adults come from the stories we carry from our past, from our childhood. The ones that we don't even question, the ones we repeat to ourselves without realizing that those stories are the stories that define us. And this is the reason I started this podcast. Because I knew what it feels to be stuck in your own head, in your own thoughts. I knew that how does it feel to have so much self-awareness but still not know how to move forward, how to change your life. I knew what it feels to want to make more for yourself, but also be terrified of change, be terrified of what does it mean even more for me. This podcast is a space for that, for the deep, uncomfortable, but necessary conversation we need to have with ourselves. This podcast is about questioning the narratives that keep us small. This podcast is about for learning how to hear the voice within. Not the voice of the fear, not the voice of expectation, not the voice of what we should be and what we should have in our life, but the voice of the truth, our own voice. So why am I switching in English? Why suddenly? So for the past year, this podcast has been in Bosnian, and for a long time, it felt natural, it felt home, it felt safe. But something inside of me suddenly started shifting. I realized that as much as I loved creating content in my native language, I was also using it as a way to stay safe, to stay in a space where I felt comfortable, where I wasn't too visible, where I wasn't exposing myself to the wider audience. And I had to ask myself, am I really honoring my voice if I'm keeping it in a space where I feel smaller than I need to be? So this is me choosing me. This is me choosing to step out, to expand. This is me choosing to trust my voice and to trust that my voice belongs in a bigger space. Not because I have all the answers and I figure it out, but because I know that the growth never happens in comfort. The only way we can grow is if we step out of the comfort. And I want to make one thing clear. This is not a rejection of my language. This is not rejection of my culture or Bosnia or my roots or Balkan. This is just evolution. My story doesn't change just because I'm changing the language. My experiences don't lose worth or depth just because I'm speaking to the wider audience. If anything, this is me honoring my journey in the most honest way possible by no longer keeping myself small. So, what can you expect from this podcast? What exactly is the voice within? This is not the podcast where I tell you to think positive and everything will be fine and everything will magic perfectly, just repeat affirmation. It's not about quick fixes, 1, 2, 3 steps that you need to do or manifest your dream life by repeating same stories and same affirmations in the mirror. This is about real work. This podcast is about emotional intelligence. This podcast is about self-awareness. It's about breaking through limiting beliefs. It's about recognizing how we sabotage ourselves. It's about understanding why do we resist the things that are actually good for us, the things that we actually want. This podcast is about parts of us that we hide, the parts of us which we don't want to look, where it feels uncomfortable to look. And those parts of us that are hidden actually control our lives. I'll be talking about fear. I will be talking about resistance, about discipline. I will talk about need to control others, need to control our life. We will talk about discomfort of the growth, the weight of expectation, what we do that we think we should do, and what actually we should do. And we will talk about the courage it takes to rewrite your own story. So if you ever felt like you are standing in your own way, this podcast is for you. If you ever felt like you want to change and you would like to change your life, you would like to rewrite your life, but you don't know how, this podcast will give you value to do that. And to be honest, I don't promise easy answers, but I do promise you a real honest conversation that will challenge you, make you think, and hopefully help you see yourself in a completely different way like never before. So this is just the beginning. And to be honest, I don't have the perfect roadmap and I don't pretend to have all the answers and to be the one who figured it out all. But what I do, I have a deep commitment to asking the right questions, to challenge my own beliefs, my own life, and to continuously grow and share everything I learn along the way. So if anything of this I said resonates with you, hit follow so you don't miss new episodes and share this podcast with someone who might need it. If you want to stay more connected, you can find me on Instagram. The link is in the show notes of this episode. And on Instagram, I share my life, I share my thoughts, I share my reflections, and we have real-time talk there. And that would be it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode next Sunday. Let's begin.